For more on the impact of the collapse of the bridge and what it means for the local economy and elsewhere, let's have a chat now with Professor Jean-Paul Rodrigue with the Maritime Business Administration at Texas A&M University at Galveston. Professor, thank you very much for joining us. Our thoughts and prayers, obviously, with the missing and the families and friends, but help us, get a sense of the importance of the Francis Scott Key Bridge to Baltimore and also to the wider Maryland economy.
Thank you for having me. This bridge is essentially part of the ring road that surrounds the city of Baltimore. So it obviously has a strong, I would say, influence and a strong effect on the traffic going through the region along the most heavily trafficked route of the United States, which is Interstate 95. However, on the positive side, there are alternatives to this route, but still it's going to be a very expensive and complicated accident.
Professor, the U.S. Transportation Secretary said this incident is going to have very far-reaching implications, particularly affecting America's national supply chain. Can you tell us, what are we talking about here? What is the fallout going to be?
I think we could have to put this a little bit in this context. Baltimore is, I would say, a mid-sized port. It carries around 1.1 million TEU per year, 20-foot equivalent unit. New York is 9 million. So that is a significant event in terms of the disruption, but it is not that catastrophic. It is going to have a disruption, particularly over the car import and export industry, because Baltimore was ranked among the #1 in the United States for car import and export. But still, a lot of this traffic can be diverted to nearby ports, such as I mentioned before, New York, or Hampton Roads, which is in Virginia, Savannah, and probably other smaller ports around the eastern seaboard.
So, Professor, I just want to be clear, we're not talking about a major disruption. We are talking about some disruption, but they are going to be able to find other ways to get their exports and to move goods, in and out of the country in the meantime?
Yes, I would say it's a significant disruption, but I don't think it's a disruption that is of, I would say, very high impact for the regional economy, because we're dealing with traffic, particularly containers and cars, if we focus on these, which are flexible, which can be rerouted to other ports, which are quite capable, if you put them all together, to handle this disruptions. And we'll see for how long it's going to last.
Can you tell us about the path that this cargo ship was supposed to take? How common is it for such a large vessel to travel so close to critical infrastructure like that bridge?
This is very common because it's a navigation channel. The paths are very well, I would say, identified. There were 2 pilots on the ship. They know the route very well. So this is nothing unusual as far as the path is concerned. Every major port access around the world, usually those ships are going to pass nearby, you could say, critical infrastructure, such as bridges, which is in this case.
Professor, you mentioned the auto sector, which is the most likely going to feel the greatest impact. But I've been reading a little bit about how coal shipments and other, sectors might be affected as well. What are the others which might feel it?
Yes, for what I understand, Baltimore was a very important exporter of coal, particularly for power plants for India in particular. So this is going to be, I would say, a little bit more difficult to mitigate. But that was more, I would say, some form of secondary traffic. There's always some kind of niche. I would think about gypsum, other chemicals, but they tend to be, I would say, smaller type of markets for the ports to be involved in.
We know, Professor, the rebuilding is going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Can you give us a timeline of how long it's going to take to rebuild this bridge, and also its impact not only on local traffic, but, say, cruise ships that are supposed to be in that area?
The bridge has essentially been completely destroyed, so it has to be rebuilt from the start. It's going to take, in my opinion, at least 5 years to rebuild the bridge. Maybe a little bit shorter if let's say there's less red tape. It could be perceived as a project of national significance. It could accelerate it, but 3 to 5 years at least to rebuild such infrastructure.